biggest mistakes that I see people make in family court is not keeping accurate records. And I say this in almost every video, but I'm going to say it one more time for the people in the back. In family court, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And this is especially important when we're talking about if your child is being withheld from you. Meaning, you can't just claim that the other parent is keeping your child away from you without being able to back it up with evidence, because though you may know the truth and the other parent may know the truth, the reality is the court does not, right? So what exactly do you mean when you say that the other parent won't let you see your kid? How is the other parent interfering exactly? Have you tried to call them and they just aren't answering the phone? Have you tried sending text messages or showing up at their house to visit them or wherever the exchange location is and they just aren't answering the door or they aren't showing up? Do you just not know where your kids are in general because they've left and went somewhere else with your kids without your consent, such as out of state? And what efforts have you made to get in contact with your kids and the other parent, right? So the best way to ensure that you have accurate records of the things that you've been doing to make sure that you can try to see your kid when you're supposed to or otherwise communicate with them is communicating with the other parent in writing only, whether that is emails, whether that is text messages, or whether that is a co-parenting app. That way, you can have accurate records of every single attempt that you've made to see or communicate with your child or to communicate regarding your child. Step 1, keeping accurate records. If you do not already, and I know that this may sound like it's extreme, it may sound like it's doing the most, but I'm telling you as a family law trial attorney, one of the most valuable things that has helped so many of my clients get ahead and get to the point where they were able to get shared custody, physical custody, or even have the other parent held accountable for interfering with their custodial time or their communication or otherwise violating court orders is by keeping accurate records. And that means I usually have them keep a calendar in their car, a calendar at their home, or they use my co-parent journal, which is basically a log that has prompts within it to help you just keep notes on the dates, the times, and the efforts that you've made. So if you show up to a visit and they're not there, you write the date, you write the time, you write the location, you take a photo of the location, etc. If you are making phone calls and they're not answering, or if something happens, you can write it down in your journal so that you don't ever forget what happened on what day. And we all know that when you're in a divided or blended family, a lot can happen from day to day. You need to have a central place where you can keep accurate records so that when you need to refer back to them, or when your attorney is asking you for information or what exactly has been going on, you'll have more details than you actually need so that you can easily point your attorney to the right direction, reference the messages, reference the calls, reference the visit attempts and things of that nature so that they'll have enough evidence to present in court. Speaking of evidence, again, you have to have evidence to be able to prove your case. Those text messages, emails, call logs, whatever it is that you need. If you've been communicating in a co-parenting app, which is my preferred method of communication for parents in divided or blended families, you need to make sure that you're keeping copies of all of that information, because the court will again need to see it so that you can prove your case. Now, when we're talking about being able to backtrack and obtain records, you can contact your phone carriers to get copies of your call log or to find out how they will release your call logs to you so that you can keep track of or have a list of all of the calls that have been made to that particular number that belongs to your child or your child's other parent or whoever they're with. You can also request a copy of your text messages, but better yet, there are even apps available that will allow you to go through your text messages, select the messages that are applicable, and download them. How good is that? You can literally use these apps to select your other parent's phone number and then download all of the messages that you've sent or received from them for your use in court. They will include the timestamp, the date, and obviously the messages themselves, and you'll be able to use them as evidence when you're questioning the other parent or when you are communicating or giving your testimony in court. All of these things will come in handy to prove that you've actually been trying to see your child, trying to call your child, and that the other parent has had an active hand in either just completely ignoring you altogether, which is problematic, right? Or just choosing to refuse to allow you to see your child, which is also problematic, or violating the court orders if it's some other order that they are violating. So just make sure that you're prepared. And again, that's where those notes will come in handy that are in the Coparenting Journal. If you don't already have a copy of my Coparenting Journal, I will put a link down below. You can have a copy absolutely free, but you will be able to look back in the journal and say, okay, on March 6th, I showed up and I sent a message and told him or her that I was here to pick up the child, and they didn't answer, or they responded with X, right? You take that from your Co-Parenting Journal, you go and select this message in the text message downloading app, and then boom, all of your evidence is right there. It will make things much, much easier when it comes to trying to prepare for your trial or your evidentiary hearing, where you will have the opportunity to present your evidence. And finally, if you have any third parties who have witnessed you trying to be able to see your child, making these phone calls, going with you to the exchange location to try to pick up your child, that you have been contacting and having them reach out to the other parent to try to get them to comply with the court order or to otherwise allow you to see your child, then that also could be helpful, as you can subpoena them to come in and testify on your behalf. So that is also something that could be helpful for your case when it comes to having cumulative evidence, right? And a lot of times, you know, you got to understand that family court is already a very tumultuous environment. It's high conflict. There's a lot of he say, there's a lot of she say, there's a lot of back and forth. And the person who is able to prove their case is usually the one that's going to be able to come out on top. And if you're keeping accurate records of all of these things, you will have an overwhelming amount of evidence. And at some point, the judge is going to say, okay, we're on visit number 82 that has clearly been violated. I'm tired of hearing about it. We have a problem. And that is ultimately where you're trying to go. If you have not already filed a case to open and establish your parental rights, that would be step one. If you have and you already have orders in place that just aren't being followed, then your next step would likely be to take action to enforce those orders.